The sun shone brightly over a New York park, a perfect day for families to enjoy the outdoors. But amidst the cheerful laughter of children and the rustling of leaves, an uncomfortable scene began to unfold. Barron Trump, just 17 and tall for his age, was enjoying a quiet moment under a tree. Known for his reserved nature, he seemed lost in thought, sketching in a notebook. Then came the laughter. A man, mid-40s, with a loud voice and a mocking grin, pointed at Barron. "Look at him! So quiet, so odd!" His words were sharp, his laughter piercing the peace of the park. People turned, some murmuring in disbelief. Barron froze. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, especially like this. His face turned pale, his hand gripping the pencil tightly, and then she appeared. Melania Trump, poised as ever, walked toward the scene. Her presence was magnetic, her every step filled with grace. The park went silent, all eyes on her. Without raising her voice, she looked directly at the man and said, "Do you know what strength looks like? It looks like this boy, who chooses kindness even when mocked." The man's laughter faltered, his confidence cracking under Melania's steady gaze. Her voice, calm yet firm, carried through the park like a bell. "My son has faced more than you can imagine, yet here he stands, not mocking back, not lashing out. Can you say the same for yourself?" Barron looked at his mother, his eyes glistening with emotion. He had always admired her quiet strength, but this moment was different. Her words weren't just for the man, they were for everyone watching. An older woman sitting nearby wiped a tear from her cheek. "She's right," she whispered to a friend. "We've all faced struggles, but grace like that, it's rare." The man, now visibly uncomfortable, mumbled an apology and walked away. The crowd remained still, as if holding its breath. Melania turned to Barron, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Are you all right, my love?" she asked gently. He nodded, though his emotions were clearly overwhelming him. The park erupted into soft applause, a collective acknowledgement of a mother's strength and love. But for Melania and Barron, this moment was far from over. It was just the beginning. The story of the park incident spread like wildfire. By the next day, headlines were buzzing. Melania Trump silences critic with grace, and a mother's love in the face of cruelty. Barron, who preferred to stay out of the limelight, felt uneasy. "Mom, I didn't want this to become a big deal," he said softly at breakfast. Melania smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "Sometimes the world needs reminders of kindness and strength, Barron. You gave them that yesterday." But not everyone was supportive. Social media erupted with debates. While many praised Melania, others questioned her intentions. Barron, scrolling through comments, felt a mix of emotions. The cruelty stung, but the kindness from strangers also filled him with hope. Among the messages was one from a veteran, a man in his 70s, who wrote, "As someone who has faced ridicule for being different, I want you to know, Barron, you are not alone. Your mother's words reminded me of my own mother, who always told me to hold my head high." Barron showed the message to Melania, his voice trembling. "People like him, they matter, don't they?" Melania hugged him. "They do, Barron, and so do you." It was an ordinary morning when the photograph surfaced online. Taken by a bystander, it captured Melania standing tall, her arm gently resting on Barron's shoulder, her face filled with calm strength. Barron stood beside her, his expression a mix of vulnerability and quiet resilience. The image went viral. Headlines popped up everywhere. A mother's shield and silent strength, the Trump family's public moment. Barron, scrolling through his phone, stopped at the photo. "I don't get it, Mom," he said. "Why are people so interested in us?" Melania paused, looking at the screen. "Because, my love, people see their own struggles in moments like this. They see a mother protecting her child. It reminds them of their own families." Meanwhile, the comments under the photo poured in. A grandmother from Florida wrote, "This photo brought tears to my eyes. I see my own grandson in Barron. Kids like him need to know they're not alone." Barron's eyes welled up. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he whispered. Melania took his hand. Sometimes, Barron, the hardest moments bring out the best in people. Let's see where this takes us. But neither of them knew what was coming next. 2 days after the photo went viral, a letter arrived at their home. The envelope was old-fashioned, handwritten, and addressed simply to Barron Trump. Curious, Melania opened it with Barron by her side. The letter was from a retired schoolteacher named Margaret, 84 years old. Her words were shaky but heartfelt. "Dear Barron, I saw the photo of you and your mother, and it touched me deeply. I lost my only son, James, to illness many years ago. He was just your age. Seeing you reminded me of him, quiet, thoughtful, and kind. Your mother's love for you shines so brightly. It's something I hope you carry with you always. The world can be cruel, but never forget there is love too. Stay strong, Barron. You have a gift to share, even if you don't see it yet." Barron read the letter twice, his voice trembling. She lost her son?" he asked, tears streaming down his face. Melania nodded, her own eyes misty. "And yet, she still found the strength to send us this. That's love, Barron. That's grace." Barron folded the letter carefully, as if it were the most precious thing he'd ever held. Days turned into weeks, but the moment in the park continued to ripple across the world. Barron's quiet courage and Melania's graceful response struck a chord with people from all walks of life. Then, an unexpected invitation arrived. It was from a youth support organization hosting a global conference in Washington, D.C. They wanted Barron to attend as a guest speaker. At first, Barron refused. "Me? Speak in front of people? I can't do that, Mom," he said, pacing the living room. Melania placed a hand on his shoulder. "Barron, sometimes the world needs to hear from those who feel unseen. Your story can inspire others, but the choice is yours." Barron thought about the letter from Margaret, the veteran's message, and the countless supportive comments online. Slowly, he nodded. "I'll try," he whispered. When the day of the conference arrived, Barron stood backstage, his hands shaking. Melania was there, holding his hand. "You are stronger than you know, Barron," she said softly. As his name was called, he stepped onto the stage, his heart pounding. The audience fell silent, waiting for him to speak. The stage lights felt blinding as Barron Trump stepped forward. He gripped the edges of the podium tightly, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. Faces stared back at him, some expectant, others encouraging. Among them, Melania sat in the front row, her serene smile anchoring him. He cleared his throat, his voice trembling. "Hi, my name is Barron Trump," he began. "And I don't usually do this." Nervous laughter rippled through the audience. Barron took a deep breath. "A few weeks ago, someone laughed at me in a park. They mocked me for being quiet, for being different. At first, I wanted to disappear, but then my mom stepped in." His voice steadied as he continued. "She taught me that being different isn't something to be ashamed of. It's a strength. And the letters and messages we've received since that day showed me something else. We're not alone. There are so many people out there who feel unseen, who feel mocked for who they are." The audience was silent, captivated. Tears streamed down the face of an older man in the crowd. Barron's vulnerability was striking a chord. Barron finished his speech, his final words echoing in the room. "If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. We all have a voice, even when it feels small. And sometimes, just being kind is the loudest thing you can do." For a moment, there was silence. Then, the room erupted in applause. People stood, clapping, some wiping tears from their eyes. Barron looked out at the crowd, overwhelmed. Melania joined him on stage, pulling him into a hug. "You were amazing," she whispered. Backstage, a group of attendees approached him. One was a teenage girl with braces and tearful eyes. "Thank you," she said. "I've always been made fun of for being quiet. Hearing you today, it meant everything." An elderly man with a cane added, "You reminded me of my younger self. I wish someone had told me those words when I was your age." Barron felt a wave of emotion. The impact of his words was more profound than he had imagined. For the first time, he realized his own strength, but what happened next would change everything. The conference wasn't over when Barron and Melania were told someone wanted to meet them. "He insisted on speaking to you both," an organizer explained. They entered a private room to find none other than Denzel Washington waiting for them. A man of wisdom and faith, Denzel greeted them warmly. "I watched your speech, Barron," he said, his deep voice carrying kindness. "And I wanted to tell you this. Your courage today reminded me of my mother. She always said, 'When you stand in truth, you stand in power.' That's what you did." Barron, starstruck, managed a quiet, "Thank you." Denzel turned to Melania. "You've raised a remarkable young man. The world needs more people like him." As they spoke, Denzel shared stories of his own challenges and triumphs, offering words of encouragement. By the end of the conversation, Barron felt an unexpected sense of belonging. When they left the room, Melania whispered to her son, "Sometimes God places the right people in your path. Today, that was Denzel." Barron nodded, a faint smile breaking through his usual shyness. He didn't realize it yet, but this was only the beginning of something far greater. Back home in Florida, Barron sat by the large windows overlooking the ocean. The memories of the conference, the applause, and Denzel's words lingered in his mind. For the first time, he felt a strange sense of purpose. Melania walked in carrying a small box. "I have something for you," she said, her tone gentle. Barron opened the box to find a framed photo of the two of them from that day in the park. Beneath it was a handwritten note from Melania. "Strength isn't in how loud you speak, but in how true you are to yourself. I'm proud of you every day." Barron blinked back tears. "Mom, I don't think I would have made it through all this without you," he admitted. Melania placed a hand on his shoulder. "Barron, sometimes life challenges us to bring out the best in us. That day in the park wasn't just about you or me. It was about showing the world that kindness is the greatest strength." As Barron looked at the photo, a question formed in his mind. What if this wasn't just about us? What if we could help others? Melania smiled knowingly. Maybe it's time we do just that. Barron and Melania began brainstorming ways to make a difference. It was Melania who first suggested an initiative focused on spreading kindness and building resilience among young people. "What should we call it?" Barron asked. Melania thought for a moment and said, "How about the Grace Project? It's about showing grace in the face of adversity, just like we did." Barron nodded. "I like it, but how do we start?" They reached out to several youth organizations, including the one that had invited Barron to speak. To their surprise, the response was overwhelming. Schools, churches, and community centers wanted to be part of their vision. During their first event, Barron shared his story with a group of students. Among them was a boy named Liam, who hesitated before raising his hand. "I get teased at school for being different," Liam admitted, his voice shaky. Barron walked over and said, "Being different isn't a weakness, Liam. It's what makes you unique, and you're not alone." Liam smiled for the first time, and Melania watched proudly as her son extended a hand of kindness. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, a new challenge arose. As the Grace Project gained momentum, not everyone was supportive. Critics online began questioning their motives, accusing the initiative of being a publicity stunt. Barron was hurt. "Why do people always assume the worst?" he asked Melania, frustration in his voice. Melania placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "When you try to do good, there will always be those who doubt you. What matters is staying true to your purpose." Their resolve was tested when a journalist published a scathing article calling the Grace Project a hollow gesture. The story went viral, and Barron felt the weight of the negativity. But then something incredible happened. Messages of support poured in. A grandmother from Iowa wrote, "My grandson struggled with bullying for years. Barron's story gave him hope. Don't stop what you're doing." Liam, the boy from the first event, sent a letter that read, "Because of you, I stood up to the kids who teased me. Thank you for believing in me." Barron looked at his mother, determination replacing doubt. "We can't stop now," he said firmly. Melania smiled. "No, we can't. This is just the beginning." Amid the criticism and praise surrounding the Grace Project, one man followed the story quietly. His name was Sir Elton John, known not only for his music, but also for his advocacy and philanthropy. One evening, as he sat in his London home, Elton watched a recording of Barron's speech at the youth conference. The boy's vulnerability, strength, and sincerity moved him deeply. "David," Elton called to his husband, "this young man reminds me of why we started our foundation. He's unpolished but real. I think I need to reach out." That night, Elton wrote a personal letter to Barron. It read, "Dear Barron, I've followed your journey, and I see so much of my younger self in you. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's facing fear with love and purpose. What you and your mother are doing is remarkable. If you ever need guidance or support, I'm here." When Barron read the letter, he couldn't believe it. "Elton John?" he exclaimed. Melania smiled. "It seems your voice is reaching farther than we imagined." Barron stared at the letter, feeling both humbled and emboldened. Little did he know, Elton's involvement would soon open new doors. A week later, Elton John invited Barron and Melania to an event in New York City, a private benefit concert for children's causes. The Trumps arrived at the grand venue, unsure of what to expect. Elton greeted them warmly. "Barron," he said, shaking the young man's hand, "it's a pleasure to meet you. Your bravery inspires us all." As the concert began, Elton dedicated a heartfelt song to Barron and Melania. The crowd, filled with philanthropists and celebrities, erupted in applause. Afterward, Elton introduced them to influential figures who could help expand the Grace Project. One of them, Oprah Winfrey, pulled Melania aside. "What you're doing is powerful," Oprah said. "Never underestimate the ripple effect of kindness." Barron met kids his age who had faced bullying and hardship. One boy, Ethan, shared his story of overcoming dyslexia. "Hearing you speak made me feel less alone," Ethan told Barron. By the end of the evening, Barron felt a deep sense of belonging. "This is bigger than I thought," he said to his mother. Melania nodded. "And it's only going to grow. Keep your heart open, Barron." Success often invites challenges, and the Grace Project was no exception. One morning, a scathing article accused Barron of using his family's name for personal gain. The headline read, "A Trump-sized ego behind a kindness facade." Barron was crushed. "Why do they hate us so much?" he asked Melania, tears in his eyes. Melania held him close. "Some people fear change, Barron. They mock what they don't understand. But this is when we show them who we really are." To address the backlash, they held a live event at a community center. Barron spoke candidly to the audience, acknowledging the criticism. "I'm not perfect," he admitted. "But this isn't about me. It's about all of us, standing together, lifting each other up." The honesty of his words silenced the skeptics. After the event, a woman in her 70s approached Barron. Her voice cracked as she said, "I lost my son to bullying years ago. Seeing you stand here today gives me hope for other children." Barron hugged her, tears streaming down his face. It was in that moment he realized the true power of his mission. The day had come for the Grace Project's largest event yet, a televised town hall featuring Barron and Melania. As they prepared backstage, Barron fidgeted with his notes. "What if I mess up?" he whispered. Melania knelt beside him, her hands resting on his shoulders. "Barron, your voice is powerful because it's honest. Speak from your heart, and no one can take that away." The event began with a panel discussion. Everything was going smoothly until a man in the audience stood up. His tone was sharp as he questioned Melania's intentions. Isn't this just another attempt to distract from your family's controversies? The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. Melania rose, her expression calm but resolute. "This is not about politics or public image," she said, her voice steady. "This is about a mother's love for her son and a desire to make the world kinder for every child." Her words resonated deeply, and the audience erupted in applause. Barron watched his mother with awe, realizing the depth of her strength. Afterward, people flooded the stage, sharing stories of hope. The man who had questioned them approached, tears in his eyes. "I was wrong," he admitted. "Thank you for reminding me what truly matters." The next morning, Barron found an envelope on the breakfast table. It was addressed to him in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a heartfelt letter. "Dear Barron, I've been following your journey from afar. I laughed at you once, thinking it would make me feel bigger. Instead, it made me realize how small I'd become. I'm sorry for my actions that day in the park. Your grace taught me more than my years ever could. Keep shining." There was no signature, but Barron knew it was from the stranger whose cruel laughter had started it all. His chest tightened as he handed the letter to Melania. "Do you forgive him?" she asked gently. Barron nodded. "I do. If I've learned anything, it's that forgiveness is the most powerful thing we can give." Together, they decided to share the letter during their next event, showing the world that change starts with a single act of kindness. The letter went viral, sparking a wave of stories from people who had chosen forgiveness over anger. As the movement grew, so did Barron's confidence. He realized that what had once been a moment of pain had become a beacon of hope for countless others. Years later, Barron stood on the stage of a packed stadium. Now a young adult, he looked out at the crowd and saw thousands of faces, young and old, united by the message of the Grace Project. He smiled as he began his speech. "What started as a single moment of hurt turned into something bigger than I ever imagined. My mother taught me that strength is found in love, not anger. And today I see that truth reflected in all of you." The crowd erupted in applause, and Barron's eyes searched for Melania in the front row. She smiled back, her pride evident. As the event ended, Barron hugged his mother tightly. "We did it," he said. "No, Barron," she replied. "You did it. You turned pain into purpose, and that's a legacy that will live on." Dear viewers, thank you for joining this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. Share your thoughts. How did this story resonate with you? Your support helps us continue creating meaningful content. Together, let's keep spreading kindness.